Hello. Happy Saturday. I don't know what time it is. Sometime in the afternoon, maybe. I've had a full morning. It was actually just lovely. It's lovely being home on Saturdays. There was a time in my life when, a long time in my life, when I was required to work Saturdays, and now I'm not. And now if I work Saturdays, I choose it, which is such a different energy. I had one coaching client this morning. I did a Facebook Live with my friend Roy earlier today, and some of the things he's creating. And now I'm here. But what a different generative energy to get to choose my time, my life, the way that I'd like to choose it. So it's a little bit about kind of what I wanted to talk about today. I just got off with a coaching client just a couple minutes ago, and something that just came up in our session that is just an interesting conversation. Don't mind my dog shaking. Let's see how loud he can be. That was not an invitation. It was just about the difference in the energy between having money, saving money, and being willing to spend money to create a different future, a greater future. And something that she was saying is that her and her friend had decided this week they weren't going to spend any money. They were going to have a no spend week. Hear all the conclusion in that and lack of asking questions. So then what happened is her dad needed to borrow her car, and which in turn used her gas, which meant she had to buy gas. And we were talking about, like, rather than going into the wrongness of like, oh, I failed at having a no spend week, looking at how that generated and created something different and greater, and following the energy of that. And so for her, it was a tank of gas, but for her dad, it meant that he could move around, do what he wanted to do, not be stuck in his home. And she cares, greatly for her dad. And, I asked her, did it create greater? And of course, yeah, it, was something that he required. And she, yep, there's my dog shaking again. I'm gonna have to kick him out. And so, but just looking at that, like, what if it wasn't about saving money so much that it's like you're saving, and it's kind of like when you try to hold on to sand, like if you're like gripping your money so tightly that you can't spend it on things that would create something greater for yourself or for the people that you care about. What's the point? Why save so much money so that you are, and I want to, I guess, look at, like, there's a different energy too, to saving money versus having money. If saving is, I'm never willing to spend it on anything, not to create greater, not to create a greater life, not for my body, not for things that would be generative, because I have to save money. And it actually has this energy of lack. I can't spend this money because then I will not have any money to replace it. Then it's hanging on to something so tightly. Where having money is a different energy, where it's like being willing to have money, being willing to honor you by having money, but also being willing to spend the money as it's required, or to create more money as it's required. And so when we look at, like, oh, well, I can't spend the money on that, even though it would create greater for me, even though it would be a greater future, it might create for someone else, something else, but not being willing to actually do that, we shut off our receiving. We cut that off by saying that we are in lack. But if we are willing to actually spend the money on what will create greater for the people that we care about, and for ourselves, and for our body, because what we really require money for, of course, is for our body. Because if we didn't have a body, we don't need money, right? We need money for food and clothes and housing and, all the things that our bodies require. So, but if we are willing to spend the money on the things that create greater for us and for the future and for people in our world, what does that actually create? And is that, greater? And this isn't to say, of course, that, okay, so you go, spend all your credit cards and, just throw money at all the things. It's just that willingness to have money. And so, that's one of the things we talk about in Access Consciousness, is having a 10% account. So that 10% of everything that comes in, you're setting aside as an honoring of you, as a way of having money, and then creating money for everything else that would create greater in your life. But always from an energy of, I can create greater, I can have more money will always be flowing into my life as long as I'm willing to receive it. And it's so interesting. I was talking to a friend the other day about, we were talking about Access and, money I've spent on classes and classes I'd like to take and things like that. And I said, one of the greatest gifts, I can't even say the greatest gift, one of the greatest gifts of Access Consciousness and the tools of Access around money specifically has been that before Access, when I wanted something, I would just put it on a credit card and I would just buy it. And then I would, or I went to college and went to grad school and created stupid amounts of student debt, because that was this reality's way of getting what you required, or taking classes you required, was to put it on some sort of credit. And one of the things that I learned early in Access was like, if you want to take an Access class, don't put it on a credit card if you can, but create the money for it. And it completely changed my point of view about how money shows up and that money shows up. Because now when I look at something like, okay, I'd like to take a class, this class that's coming up, I just ask for the money for it from the universe. You know, what would it take for this money to show up? What would it take for the money for this class to show up with total ease? Or what are the infinite possibilities of me going to this class or attending this class? And what's happened is the money always shows up for those things in cash. And so, or in a gifted class or something like that, because I, was working for the facilitator, or, some capacity where the class has shown up, where I've never gone into debt over Access. I've never charged anything for a class other than to put it on a credit card and then pay it off right away. Because I came out of the mindset that I had to go into debt, or that I had to, put something on credit. So, when we look at like being willing to have money and being willing to have money flow into our lives, asking what would it take to have my 10% account so that I'm honoring me, and I'd like more of that, please, and I have that money, but also willing to spend money on the things that will create greater for your life. And asking like, okay, well, will this create greater? Is this something, if I buy this, will it make me money? Which is a crazy question to people, but it's so nonlinear, and also something I use all the time is, I tell a story of like, if there was this skirt I wanted, and I asked like, if I buy this skirt, will it make me money? And I got just a yes, so I bought the skirt. And the thing is, I don't wear the skirt very often. When I do, it always creates conversation because it's kind of an eccentric skirt. And when I don't, it hangs in my closet, and every time I look at it, I still love the skirt, and it brings me joy, even though I don't wear it that often. And it reminds me of the day that I bought the skirt, because I, had the point of view, I asked the question, I got the awareness that it would bring money into my life, and I still continue to feel that every time I look at that. So it doesn't make any sense, but anytime you ask something, will it create greater, and will it make me money, are just great questions to ask, and just to follow the energy and the lightness of that. So something else that's just been popping a lot around like what will create greater is, and being willing to spend money is, and my friend Roy and I were just having this conversation this morning, but I guess it was after we did the live for him, was just sort of looking at like all the ways that we had tried to save money by not hiring people to do things for us, or by not sort of like outsourcing things, or trying to control everything in an effort to save money and to not spend money. And in probably the last month or two, maybe two, I realized, I hate tech stuff. And rather than trying to take multiple classes and trying to learn all the tech and the website back end and the back end of this and the back end of that, I realized I just hate it. And it's not something that I think I'll ever be good at. And while I can learn it, it's not fun for me. And so I hired somebody to do that, and I've talked a little bit about that before. And then in the last week or two, I've been doing, for the last few months, I've had my psychology private practice. And as we speak, I see that my amazing website chick, I call her my website chick, she's really just my friend and amazing, Anna Maria. I know I've done some live stuff with her. It's texting me as we speak, telling me everything I asked her to do today is done. That's ease. To be like, hey, I changed the date of this class. Can you do this for me? And it's done. So, oh my God, I'm so grateful for making that choice. And in my psychology private practice, I was doing my own billing because I didn't want to pay somebody to do my billing. And again, it was taking time, it was taking energy, and it was something I really hated doing. And I realized I was missing money because I kind of knew how to do it, but I'm not at the level of wanting to sit on the phone with insurance companies and figure out where the money was coming from. And so I made the choice to pay somebody to do my billing for me. And that has created greater. That is creating so much ease for me this week to feel like, oh, I should have something to do. No, it's done. I have somebody doing that for me now. I don't have to do anything. And so it's something, just an energy in my life where I've really started looking at where are all the things in my life that I don't want to do, that don't create more for me, that aren't fun for me. And I don't actually desire to do anything in my life that isn't fun for me anymore. And so I'm finding people who love to do it, who it's fun for, that make money, and I'm willing to pay them for it because it creates greater for my life. So for you, my question would be, where is it in your life that A, you're trying so hard to save money that you're creating an energy of lack and uninviting money into your life? And, and what would it take to change that? And what would it take to be willing to have so much fun and create so much generative joy and energy and beauty and all the things that your body requires in your life, that you'd be willing to pay for it? And I think I did a live just the other day about, are you willing to pay for things? And, and even if you don't have to pay for them, but the willingness to create a greater life for yourself, for the people you care about, for the world, even at a greater scale. Shannon O'Hara's talked a lot about how she didn't want, and Shannon O'Hara is the CF, Certified Facilitator in Access Consciousness. Highly recommend following her stuff. She's amazing. And she's also the stepdaughter of Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Consciousness. And she's talked a lot about how she was kind of a hippie and didn't ever want to have money because money was the root of all evil, and all the points of view she had about money. And when Gary finally said to her, that if you were willing to have money, you could save the rainforest. You could contribute to, the forests and the nature that, is important to you. And she, talks about wow, when she got that, she became willing to have money. So what would it take for, and it's funny too, as I started talking to my husband recently about this, is when I started sort of the journey of being willing to have more money, a lot of it was about just paying off loans. And I said, that's great, but that's not fun enough for me. I have to have something in my life that is fun enough for me to want to create money for it. And whether it be, fun for my life because I'd like to have lots of condos and lots of places so I can travel. And even greater is what would I really like to have, and what contribution to the planet would I really like to be? And for me, and I think for a lot of us, we need bigger goals or bigger targets, I guess, than just our immediate world. Oh, I'd like to have, a bigger house. I'd like to pay my car off. I'd like to this, all those things are kind of boring for us. And so then we have to ask, if money was not the issue, if I had $1 million coming into me, every month, so money was never a problem for me again, what would I actually like to do with it? What would I actually like to create in the world? And how can I use that as a motivator to create more money so that I can actually create a difference in the world for the planet that includes me, that isn't outside of me? Because that's something I've talked to people a lot about lately too, is yeah, I'm willing to have money for everybody else, but not for me. So what if you were willing to have so much money that you created a different reality for you and everybody on the planet, and everybody who was willing to choose it, that you would be willing to create a greater future by being willing to receive all the money that you're asking for and more than you even thought was possible? All right. Everything that doesn't want that. Let's destroy and create it. Right, wrong, good, bad, pot, back, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. And if you've never heard that before, that's the Access Clearing Statement. You can go to the accessclearingstatement.com. But yeah, I think we'll leave that there. So thank you all for this conversation. This has actually been really fun. So I adore you all, and I will talk to you all soon. Have a good rest of your Saturday. Bye.